This is genuinely such a bizarre circumstance that I felt it was definitely worth discussing on the channel. This time we're talking about the sudden cancellation of an animated series from Netflix, and that is Inside Job, a show I'd only just started watching a few nights ago. Similar to my rant video looking at Final Space and how this show was basically made to be a tax write-off by Warner, I suppose this video will still be pushing awareness, but more to the point. I wanted to continue discussing how unfair this situation has become for animation and streaming content in particular, mainly original streaming content where a show becomes known as a Netflix original, in the case of Inside Job, therefore control over the distribution and renewal is all down to the streaming service, and sadly once again, another day, another show is mistreated and cancelled. So what exactly does it take for a streaming original to retain its presence without the risk of being axed with little to no notice given? Well, I guess in the current climate of streaming shows, if viewing figures can't compare to the likes of Wednesday, Dharma, or even Stranger Things within its first week of airing, this is noticeably a bad thing for streaming services where they decide not to continue a certain show. And not only is this harmful to creators looking to utilize the service to fund their project, but the lack of confidence in their own content as a streaming service is slightly worrying. No longer is Netflix about making original programming for the sake of entertainment by taking on risky ideas to see what sticks. Instead, it's all about viewing figures and the cost to even bother continuing a story, which is now more important than the actual story itself. Pointing out the obvious, Netflix is of course a business, and with so many competing streaming companies nowadays, such as Apple TV, Disney Plus, and Amazon as examples, Netflix is no longer the streaming titan that it used to be. Therefore, each project it takes on needs to prove its worth compared to the viewing figures from other services. Otherwise, Netflix will lose money and the shows they make will just fade into obscurity. And speaking of Inside Job, as of the time of recording this video, I'm about halfway through the series, and so far so good. It's incredibly entertaining. I'm loving the characters. The main character of Reagan is fantastically written and has some of the quirkiest dialogue with a terrific voice performance from Lizzie Kaplan. One of the main reasons I wanted to check out this show in the first place was for Christian Slater, who is one of my favorite actors who plays a very enigmatic role with a great twist featuring his character in particular, which I would imagine does continue into the second season, which I would have thought would have been very captivating to want to continue this show. And in terms of the actual animation itself, I applaud the designs, the characters in particular. Loads of phenomenal details are scattered throughout the visuals, mostly relating to the show's main plot of a secret organization running the world from behind closed doors. And this mainly utilizes details taken from random conspiracy theories. One of my favorite gags or possible one-off characters was the Mothman, recognizably voiced by Ron Funches, and he literally uses the same soft voiceover for most of his characters, and it's always a win for the comedic effect and the writing in this scene in particular, which is essentially a group seminar about how to treat reptilian people, which is also another conspiracy. I absolutely love the layers to this comedy. It's fantastically done.
I'm a Mothman.
From the somewhat vague summaries I've read online, I've obviously not finished the show in its entirety just yet, but the main overarching story was supposedly going in quite a dark direction, and adding to the pain of losing yet another show unnecessarily, I believe the series also ends on a cliffhanger awaiting season 2, I guess very similarly to shows such as Final Space. And clearly, a lot of planning has gone into pushing the show into a second season, which is now going to be wasted effort. And before checking it out, as far as the overall show goes, I had heard it had thankfully been renewed by Netflix for a second season, which I believe was confirmed in June 2022. And recently, Season 1 Part 2 was released onto Netflix in November, which gave the show some more attention. And I deliberately put the show higher on my watch list, where I finally decided to go ahead and binge through the first lot of episodes, and the following morning, boom, news had dropped about the show having been cancelled, and the confirmation of the so-called renewal was now reversed, and having been renewed last year, the show was looking to have performed extremely well, and as such was going to be continued. Causing the fans the most pain, I find it so odd how programming executives made the choice to reverse an already confirmed decision and instead not renew the show after all. I honestly don't think I've ever seen a show be renewed so confidently and then the renewal itself be cancelled. Netflix has not commented on this situation at all. In fact, the way most people heard about the cancellation was from the show creator herself, Cheyenne Takuchi, and on Twitter and other social platforms, she did share a very emotional post about the cancellation of season 2 being true. And you can find many comments from folks that were involved with the series, such as producer Alex Hirsch, who created Gravity Falls, who heavily influenced a lot of material for this show, along with many others who have shared their gratitude for having been given the opportunity to work on this series. And in general, animation being treated in such a way just because it's expensive, arguably, is extremely disappointing, especially when the show creator is forced to announce their own cancellation and that their staff is now available and looking for work. It's a traumatizing experience for all that are involved. Lately, each cancellation from Netflix in particular seems to be a rash decision to save money when something doesn't perform the way they intended. Personally, I feel more often than not these shows just aren't given the time of day. Most recently, the series 1899 was canned after just one season, where Netflix chose not to renew it on the rumored grounds that not enough people were actually finishing the show. And so rather than finding the cause of this issue or promoting it in a different way, they instead just give up and decide to cancel the show and pull the plug before it's even given the chance to shine. And with that in mind, the finale of this series was apparently an incredible piece of television, but because the show is no longer going to be continued, not as many people are even going to bother checking it out at all anyway. And not every show is a winner from season 1. Breaking Bad is the perfect example of a show that risked cancellation, had a mixed first season due to production issues mainly revolving around writers' strikes, and is now considered to be one of the greatest pieces of modern television. And if these heavy business decisions are made from the statistics gathered over such a short period of time, such as only a couple of months, not only is this frustrating for creators that want to put their vision out there, but stats like this can be really open to interpretation. Some shows do need more time to garner a fan base. If every show gets cancelled immediately, not only is this a complete waste of time for any industry, but viewers are not going to bother investing their time into a new show. More specifically, looking at the case of Inside Job, the speculation on why the show has been cancelled is extremely open because it doesn't really make any sense. Netflix made the decision in June 2022 to renew it for a second season, where plans must have been going on behind the scenes for more content. And Netflix actually saved money on this show for its first season. It was split into 2 runs of episodes, but is technically classed as one season, so rather than paying for 2 separate seasons, this is already saving the company millions. Considering how dire the situation currently is for the animation industry overall, with a ridiculous amount of cancellations going ahead from 2022, and even now in 2023, this decision was obviously going to benefit Netflix to some respect monetary-wise, but has lost a lot of the loyalty from subscribers. Looking at the general fan consensus about Inside Job, the fanbase is obviously pissed about what is now not going to be, and rightly so. I browsed Twitter out of curiosity to see really what was going on with the general reaction, with over 50,000 trending entertainment tweets the morning of the news breaking, easily topping 100,000 by the following day, and even now, there are still multiple messages posted every single minute about renewing the show as originally intended, with a lot more people now talking about Inside Job. And it's devastating when a beloved show with so much potential is unfairly cancelled without a proper ending, with very little respect for such a celebrated property. I can see both sides of the argument. Netflix clearly believes the show is not performing well. Likely, this is based off of the metrics from the second run of episodes released in November. If it's not performing as expected, then the company is at risk of losing money. Animation is expensive, and so it gets cancelled. Fans are upset about losing the show, and in this instance, it's once again hurting the animation industry. With very little info from Netflix, I feel this decision was honestly poorly made, and reversing the renewal was just unfair on everybody, not just the fans, but the cast and crew involved that must have been planning the second season in depth. Like I mentioned before, if this keeps happening, viewers will be less likely to commit themselves to a new television show. If something is at risk of being cancelled so suddenly, then why even bother investing the time? Netflix cancelling a show is nothing new, of course, but it seems very ominous to backtrack the decision to proceed with a renewal, and that's why I feel there is more to this. Maybe we will learn something more about this decision in the coming weeks, but as for the future of Inside Job, it may look bleak right now, things may change for the better, or they may not. Nobody knows. I saw so many posts prompting other networks such as Adult Swim to pick up the show for a second season, and honestly this show does seem to be more in line with Adult Swim's programming, so it would be interesting if they did decide to pick this up. It would fit right in. How likely this is to happen? Personally, I doubt it. I was reminded of a show called Tuca and Bertie, which was cancelled by Netflix after one season, and it did survive 2 seasons with Adult Swim, so I guess anything is possible. I also saw a lot of comments drawing a negative comparison about how Inside Job gets cancelled, but a show like Big Mouth still continues with 6 seasons and possibly even more. And as much as I personally do not like Big Mouth, I think it's a terrible series, it's unfair to make that comparison. If anything, it continues to prove how viewing figures nowadays are more vocal than we may think. And I would also argue that longevity of a show can be scrutinized looking at this example. Big Mouth was given the opportunity to continue and is still gaining traction. Inside Job was not given the same treatment, and despite a loyal fanbase and future opportunities, it was thought of as expendable. Is that fair? Of course not, but it's the way streaming is now. Viewing figures and money speak volume over the fan demand and creative vision, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. By all means, if you have any thoughts on this subject in particular, looking at Inside Job, or the shape of the streaming industry currently, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave me a like down below, and for more content, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.
Are you threatening me?